An idea came to her mind, and she hurriedly said, Wuji. Wuji. Save me. That's right, Wuji. Since you were able to reserve this courtyard, your status is definitely not lower than his. Bring it up to crush him. Second ant seemed to have woken up from a dream, and she called out to Jin Wuji. Ha, ha ha ha. The green-robed man laughed coldly. They actually wanted to use their status to crush him? Who would be so powerful? Jin Wuji felt his entire body break out in a cold sweat. He was only the third young master of the Jin family of Deyuan City. In Deyuan City, this title could indeed crush many people to death, but in the imperial capital, Tui, it was nothing. So you're Wuji? The green-robed man laughed coldly. I'm standing here right now. How are you going to crush me with just your name? Milord, you must be joking. This is really a misunderstanding, Jin Wuji said, clasping his hands in obeisance. These two seniors had too much to drink, and that was why they had so rashly gone to find Grandmaster Yuan Shu. I beg for your forgiveness. Hee, do you know what this shrew called Grandmaster Yuan Shu with? The green-robed man's lips curled up in a mocking smile. Did you hear that, old dog? They actually called Grandmaster Yuan Shu old dog. In all my life, this is the first time I've seen someone dare to call Grandmaster Yuan Shu old dog. The faces of Jin Wuji and the three members of the Jiang clan all paled at the same time, and they almost pounced on these two shrews to strangle them to death first. If they wanted to die, then they should die on their own. Why did they have to drag others down with them? Eldest ant and second ant were also filled with regret. One of the reasons why they had been so arrogant was because they had suddenly been able to sit in the courtyard of the Cherishing Flower Pavilion, which made them feel as if their status had skyrocketed, but the other more important reason was that they had been drunk. Otherwise, no matter how stupid they were, they would not have rashly gone to ask for alchemical pills, and even insulted Yuan Shu as an old dog after being rejected. But now, it was too late. Speechless now, right? The green-robed man clasped his hands behind his back. His eyes swept over them, and he could not help but give a humph, and said, You country bumpkins are really arrogant. I have been here for so long, and there is still someone who dares to sit. He had finally noticed Ling Han. Ling Han did not even spare him a glance, and only tried his best to fight for food with Hunyo. Of course, he was only teasing the little girl, because he did not even have the energy to fight for food. He was already full after a few bites. How dare you, seeing me, and still dare to sit? The green-robed man glared at him, exuding an oppressive pressure. Ling Han's eyes turned cold, and with a casual flick, the rib in his hand immediately flew out, flying towards the green-robed man. The green-robed man stretched out his hand to grab the rib, but unexpectedly, just as his hand was about to touch the rib, that piece of rib actually miraculously twisted in a different direction, bypassing his hand, and with a paw, slammed into his face. Firstly, it was because he had underestimated his opponent, and secondly, it was because of Ling Han's ingenious use of force, which resulted in such an effect. You seek death! The green-robed man roared angrily, and with a sudden leap, he pounced towards Ling Han, brandishing his fists to attack. Ling Han's feet bounced off the ground, and he had already bounced backwards. Using the exiting cloud steps, he moved with ease. A mere trash in poly tier was actually able to remain so calm under the attack of a gushing spring tier martial artist. The green-robed man's first attack was caught off guard, but after a few moves and still did not manage to take down Ling Han, he could not help but reveal a cautious expression. Withdrawing his hand, he asked, Brat, who are you? Slap yourself 10 times first, and then I'll talk to you, Ling Han said calmly. Daring to call himself I in front of him, how could he not give him a beating? Arrogant! The green-robed man humphed coldly, and once again launched an attack towards Ling Han. Xiao, Hunyo leapt out from the chair, and shot rapidly towards the green-robed man, her speed extremely fast. The green-robed man had not taken Hunyo seriously at first, but with this sudden movement, he was astonished. This little girl who was only 5 or 6 years old was actually in poly tier. Did you dare believe it? But he immediately became bold. Since he could not deal with Ling Han, he decided to make an example out of this little girl. A cold smile appeared on his face, and he suddenly shot out a fist, smashing it fiercely towards Hunyao. "You dare!" Ling Han roared angrily. This person could even deal such a heavy blow to a little girl like Hunyao. He was practically inhumane. He hurriedly leapt out, intending to help Hunyao neutralize this punch. Chapter 169. Ling Han was far away, and just as the cyan-clothed man's fist was about to land on Hunyao, the little girl's figure suddenly flashed strangely, and she appeared behind the cyan-clothed man. Her hands turned into claws, and with a shwa shwa shwa, she struck out. Peng, 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 the concentrated sounds of attacks were heard, and the man once again paid the price for his carelessness. His back was continuously struck, and his clothes fluttered like butterflies, accompanied by streaks of blood. Who would have thought that a little girl of 5 or 6 years old would have such power? However, the gap between Poly Tier and Gushing Spring Tier was still too big. Although the man looked very wretched, he had already used origin power to protect his body, so his injuries weren't too serious. His bones and internal organs were all undamaged. Even so, he let out a furious roar of humiliation. A powerful warrior in the second layer of Gushing Spring Tier was actually injured so badly by a little girl. Die! He threw a backhand punch towards Hunyao on his back. Hunyao immediately moved, and circled around to the chest of the green-clothed man. Peng, this punch was not stopped in time, and actually landed on his own body. It was so painful that his face turned green, and tears poured out uncontrollably. Ling Han's cultivation level had dropped, but his judgment was still sharp. After a while, he relaxed. The little girl was definitely fine. Ah, get lost! The man threw another punch towards his own chest, but Hunyao was like a monkey, and with a slurp, she hung onto his thigh again. This time, the man finally learned his lesson. He stopped his punch in time, but Hunyao's groin kick landed directly on the fragile peach. Even if he was in Gushing Spring Tier, so what? There were still many weak points on his body, such as the eyes, the dantian, and the root of a man. This kick landed solidly, and the green-robed man instantly used his hands to cover his crotch. His legs swayed, his face flushed red, and he gritted his teeth so hard that they made cracking sounds. One could clearly feel the veins on his neck throbbing, but he was so stunned that he couldn't say a single word. All the men present couldn't help but clamp their legs together, feeling a chill that made them break out in cold sweat. Hunyao leaped back and hung on to Ling Han's body. She turned around and made a face at the green-robed man, looking very innocent and innocent. Pa, the man in green half knelt on the ground, his body twitching. Obviously, this kick was really too serious. Who would have thought that a mighty warrior of Gushing Spring Tier would actually lose to a little girl in such a humiliating manner? That's right, this kind of technique would be looked down upon no matter where it was used, but when used by Hunyao, it was only natural. You, a man, bullied a little girl, so you deserved to be kicked to death. Moreover, you were in Gushing Spring Tier, while the other party was only a child of 5 or 6 years old. This kind of humiliation had really reached the heavens. Well done. Ling Han gave Hunyao a thumbs up. In the future, if anyone wants to bully you, feel free to kick them. If anything happens, I'll take care of it for you. Hunyao understands. Hunyao revealed a big smile, her smile even sweeter. Fine, there was actually such a way to educate a child. Wasn't he afraid of teaching a bad lesson and raising a female hooligan? You've gotten into big trouble. We're from the Wu clan. Have you heard of the Wu clan, one of the 8 great clans? The other 2 members of the Wu clan said fiercely. They were only in Poly Tier. Don't think that all of the 8 great clans were elites. Every clan had people with high talent, and there were also people with low talent. Then you 2 stay as well. Ling Han moved and attacked the 2. He was able to match Qi Yongyi, who was in the 9th layer of Poly Tier, when he was in the 4th layer of Poly Tier. Now that his strength had soared to the 7th layer, these two weaklings were nothing. With just one move, the two were taken down. Hunyo moved and gave the two a good beating. The members of the Jiang clan broke out in a cold sweat. They were members of the Wu clan, and now they were being beaten like dead dogs. They were done for, and no one would survive. Even eldest aunt and second aunt didn't care about crying in pain and hurriedly rushed up, wanting to restrain the two lunatics, Ling Han and Hunyo. Ling Han naturally wouldn't tangle with the two shrews, so he took a few steps back. He'd already beaten them to his heart's content anyways. "You're all dead." The green-robed man finally managed to catch his breath. His face was filled with both shame and anger. As a mighty warrior in gushing spring tear, he should have been able to easily take down everyone here, but in the end, he was easily defeated by a little girl. This humiliation would never be washed away. "If you don't speak, no one will think you're mute." Ling Han kicked. With a paw, half of the man's teeth fell out, and he screamed in pain again. This time, he was truly injured from head to toe. The members of the Jiang clan all looked at Ling Han like he was a madman. In their minds, Ling Han definitely couldn't have a background that surpassed that of the 8 great clans, but he actually beat up a member of the Wu clan. Wasn't this the same as hanging himself? Was he tired of living? Even Jin Wuji felt his limbs turn cold. He knew very well that Ling Han came from the Yuan city like him, and at most only knew a few black-grade low-level alchemists. They'd caused trouble, they'd really caused a huge trouble this time. "We don't know you." Eldest aunt and second aunt hurriedly said in a trembling voice. Then, they turned to Father Jiang and said, "Jiang Bo Xian, we'll also make a clean break with you. From now on, you're you, and we're us. This trouble was caused by you, don't drag us into it." Father and Mother Jiang, as well as Jiang Fei Yen and Jin Wuji, were all furious. It was this pair of mother and son who had rashly gone to find Grandmaster Yuan Chu, and even insulted him as an old dog. But now, this had nothing to do with them. How could there be such shameless people? "Not a single one of you can escape," the green-robed man said fiercely. Now, he only felt that his lower body was completely numb, and he didn't know if he was crippled or not. If he was really crippled, he would kill everyone here 3 times to vent his hatred. You still dare to speak?" Ling Han was very surprised, and raised his foot again. "No." The green-robed man was shocked. This young man was practically a madman. He clearly knew that he was a member of the Wu clan, and still dared to attack him. Moreover, he was extremely ruthless. He was really scared. Who asked him to be so heavily injured now, and not be able to display the battle prowess he should have? But he swore that he would definitely crush Ling Han's bones and scatter his ashes. "You're not honest in your heart," Ling Han said slowly. Hunyo immediately bared her teeth and roared, showing her ferocious nature. The green-robed man instantly felt his anus clench. Compared to Ling Han, he was actually more afraid of Hunyo. This little girl was practically like a demonic beast. Humans could still reason with them, threaten them, and even tempt them with benefits, but what about demonic beasts? No matter what they said, it would be useless. "Just give up. Even if I beat you half to death, later, the adults in your clan will only say that I did a good job," Ling Han said calmly. "Bullshit." The green-robed man immediately said disdainfully in his mind. Even the members of the Jiang clan shook their heads internally. This was something that was completely impossible, unless Ling Han was the illegitimate son of the current reign emperor. In that case, it was indeed possible that the Wu clan would lower their heads. "Zifeng, have you still not settled the matter?" It was at this moment that an aged voice was heard from outside. Chapter 170. Elder Qian Feng. The azure-clothed man and the other two called out at the same time, their voices filled with grief and indignation. Wasn't that so? It had always been them who bullied others, but today, they were trampled on the ground and beaten violently. It was simply driving them crazy. 2 people appeared at the door. One was an old man in his 60s, dressed in a red robe. His hair was jet black, and his face was very smooth. He did not look old at all. The other person's age was similar, and there were 2 silver badges hanging on his chest. Anyone with a bit of common sense would know that this represented the identity of a black-grade middle-level alchemist. Obviously, one of them was the Wu family's elder, Wu Qianfeng, and the other was Master Yuan Chuan. Greetings, Grandmaster Yuan. Greetings, Lord Wu. The members of the Jiang family hurriedly went up to greet them. To them, these were truly important figures. Normally, it was difficult to even see one of them. Now that 2 of them had arrived, their legs began to tremble. When Yuan Shu saw eldest aunt and second aunt, he could not help but snort, revealing a very displeased expression. These 2 shrews actually dared to call him an old dog. To an alchemist who had always had his eyes on the top of his head, this was a great humiliation. "This old man can't afford to accept your courtesy," he said coldly. Actually, with his status, he wouldn't stoop to the level of these 2 shrews. However, there was simply too much hatred in his heart. If he didn't mock them, he wouldn't be able to vent his hatred. From this aspect, it could be seen that eldest aunt and second aunt's battle prowess was still very strong. They could actually cause a black-grade middle-level alchemist to lose his composure. This was something that not many people could do. "Master Yuan, we were blind. Please be magnanimous and let us go." Eldest aunt and second aunt both knelt on the ground, crying and slapping themselves. Yuan Shu, however, remained unmoved. "Didn't you say that there was someone here who could suppress me? Now that I'm here, call him out." Jiang Chen's father and the others were all stunned. They thought to themselves, so this is how eldest aunt and second aunt escaped. She's really despicable. She's dragging us all down with her just to survive temporarily. Wu Qianfeng turned to the azure-clothed man, his face ashen. "What's going on? You can't even capture a few people?" A Wu family disciple had actually been beaten to the point that his teeth had fallen out. This was a complete provocation to the Wu family. The azure-clothed man and the other 2 lowered their heads in shame and indignation. How could they say that they had been defeated by a little girl? "Which expert is here? Since you've taught a lesson to my unfilial descendants, why don't you show yourself?" Wu Qianfeng's gaze swept over them. The strongest among them was only at the 9th layer of Poly, and it was impossible for them to defeat Wu Zifeng. "It's him." The azure-robed man pointed at Ling Han. "Him?" Wu Qianfeng's face was filled with astonishment. This was just a 7th layer Poly Realm Junior. Had Wu Qianfeng gone crazy? "It's him." The azure-clothed man gritted his teeth as veins bulged on his forehead. "He used sinister methods to defeat me. Elder Qianfeng, please take action and punish him severely." "Oh." Wu Qianfeng stood with his hands clasped behind his back. His eyes were fixed on Ling Han, and there was a faint killing intent in them. Regardless of whether Ling Han had used sinister methods or not, since he dared to make a move against a member of the Wu clan, he had already been sentenced to death. "Brat, are you going to kill yourself, or do you want me to do it?" he asked calmly. Sensing the old man's killing intent, Hunyao immediately threw herself onto the ground. She raised her head slightly and bared her teeth, revealing a guarded expression. Hunyao. Yuanshu's attention had been attracted by eldest aunt and second aunt all this while, so he said a few more words. These 2 shrews were indeed very powerful, to be able to make a great alchemist so focused on them that he completely ignored the others. Only now did he suddenly notice Hunyao. Hunyao was here. Could it be? He hurriedly swept his gaze around, and when he saw Ling Han, a smile instantly appeared on his face. He jogged over to greet Ling Han, bowing from a distance, and said, "I did not know that young Master Han was here. Yuan Shu has been disrespectful." Pooh! Seeing this scene, everyone choked. Hey, you're a black-grade middle-level alchemist, how noble is your status? Why do you look like a bootlicker? You're smiling so much that you're about to blossom. Fuck, too flattering, it's really embarrassing. Eldest aunt and second aunt both gaped, their tongues hanging out, and their eyes almost popping out of their sockets. Wasn't this a country bumpkin? Wasn't he here to freeload with Jin Wuji? Why did even Grandmaster Yuan Shu have to respectfully address him as young Master Han? What was going on? Wu Qianhua was also shocked. He clearly knew what a black-grade middle-level alchemist represented, but he actually acted so respectfully in front of Ling Han. This was practically unbelievable. Even if the patriarch of the Wu clan was here, Yuan Shu would definitely not be so submissive. Alchemists were an extremely proud group. If one wanted them to lower their heads, then the only way was to surpass them in alchemy. But the problem was, how old was Ling Han to be able to make others believe that he could surpass Yuan Shu in alchemy? All of a sudden, the surroundings were completely silent. No one could say a word. What kind of people have you befriended? Ling Han frowned, obviously very displeased. Wu Qianhua was about to explode in rage. This was practically calling a monk bald in front of him. If Ling Han was the elder of some great clan, then he could accept it, but a youth who was still wet behind the ears actually dared to mock him in front of his face? How could he endure this? Yes, yes, yes. It's all Yuan Shu's fault for not realizing his mistake. Please forgive me, young Master Han. Who would have thought that Yuan Shu would only admit his mistake repeatedly, his attitude becoming more and more humble, as if he was Ling Han's alchemy apprentice? Wu Qianhua forcefully swallowed the words that were on the tip of his tongue. Was Yuan Shu an idiot? Of course not. Was Yuan Shu's status high? Of course it was. But even Yuan Shu had to be so careful and respectful, so how terrifying was Ling Han's status? Wu Qianhua was not a person who acted on impulse. He immediately re-evaluated the situation. Forget it. Ling Han waved his hand, then looked at Wu Qianhua with a grin, and said, I was the one who beat up a member of your Wu clan. What do you want to do? What do I want to do? Of course I want to execute him in front of everyone, to serve as a warning to others. This was Wu Qianhua's initial thought, but how would he dare to think of such a thing now? Because Yuan Shu was already looking at him with an unfriendly gaze. Obviously, if he dared to say anything harsh, Yuan Shu would dare to turn against him. He sighed internally, knowing that he had already lost this battle before it had even been fought. There was nothing he could do. Who asked him to ask Yuan Shu for help? Moreover, even if he had no desires, his clan would definitely not offend a black-grade middle-level alchemist. Young Master Han must be joking. These guys must have offended young Master Han. Even if young Master Han did not make a move, I would still teach them a good lesson, Wu Qianhua said with a laugh. His expression was natural, and there was not the slightest bit of grievance on his face. What an old fox. That giant hand of origin power only had to clench, and Lu Yutong was caught. With just this obstruction, Ling Han had already surpassed the limits that the giant hand of origin power could reach, and had no choice but to grab Lu Yutong and roll her back. Pa, Uncle Fu casually threw Lu Yutong to the ground and said to Ao Yangming, this old servant is useless, please punish me, young master. No matter, that guy is definitely going to die anyways. Ao Yangming sneered. He only cared about Lu Yutong. So what if Ling Han was smashed into pieces? The ancient record wouldn't be broken anyways, so he could just pick up the corpse later. However, his face immediately revealed a shocked expression because Ling Han, who was falling rapidly, actually opened a large umbrella. The speed of his fall immediately slowed down, and he floated in the air like cotton, falling towards the distant forest. This time, even if Uncle Fu immediately ran out of the palace to chase, with this detour, Ling Han would have long since fallen into the forest. That was a natural barrier, so how could he find Ling Han? Damn it! He immediately roared, but when his gaze swept over Lu Yutong, a cold smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. With this hostage in hand, he wasn't afraid that Ling Han would keep hiding and not come out. In the distance, Ling Han's gaze seemed to be able to penetrate space, staring at Ao Yangming's face. At this moment, a strong killing intent arose in him. Ao Yangming couldn't help but feel a chill in his heart, but immediately thought that with his status, he had no need to be afraid of such a brat, and instantly straightened his back. Ling Han mouthed a few words, and without another look, his figure had already descended into the forest. You risked your life for him, but he didn't even spare you a second glance, Ao Yangming said to Lu Yutong. At this time, he obviously wanted to sow discord. Lu Yutong was unmoved, and only sneered at Ao Yangming, saying, "He'll come and save me." "Oh, why would he come and save you?" Ao Yangming sneered. "A mere element gathering tier." Lu Yutong didn't say anything else, as if she was looking down on Ao Yangming. Ao Yangming was furious, and was about to flip out when he heard Uncle Fu say, "Young master, it's dangerous here, let's leave first." Ao Yangming could only nod and say, "Let's go." The group left the main hall, and could still hear the sounds of the 8 spiritual ocean tier warriors and the silver-armored corpses' fierce battle from afar. They couldn't help but look worried. Ling Han put away the blood-sucking origin gold and walked forward with a gloomy expression. Hunyo felt the hidden rage beneath Ling Han's calm expression and bared her teeth in anger, as if she was going to bite someone. "I have to save the little female attendant, but if I go like this, it's equivalent to throwing my life away," Ling Han thought as he walked. "The only way is for me to break through to Gushing Spring tier. At that time, I'll be able to get a chance for Black Tower's power boost and possess the power of the first layer of the spiritual ocean tier. Then, I'll find a chance to activate 10,000 techniques return to 1 and kill that old dog in one strike." 10,000 techniques return to 1, practiced to the extreme, was to combine 10,000 sword strikes into one strike, which was enough for Ling Han to kill someone of a higher tier. However, the origin power required for this move was too terrifying, and Ling Han couldn't possibly execute it now. However, if he had the power of the spiritual ocean tier, then it definitely wouldn't be a problem. "No matter what, I have to break through to Gushing Spring tier," Ling Han made up his mind, found a hidden spot in the dense forest, and began to accumulate the last bit of power. The origin nucleus in his dantian hadn't reached its limit yet, but it would need at most 3 days. Now that he was going to attack with all his might, it was possible that he could reach the true limit of element gathering tier within 2 days. 2 days, he only needed 2 days. Yes. Wu Qianbo was currently very happy, so he didn't mind at all. Ling Han's tone was very rude. "All right, you can go now." Ling Han waved his hands, ordering him to leave. "Yes." Wu Qianbo hurriedly clasped his hands in apology to the members of the Jiang clan as he picked up the 3 descendants of his clan. Since the poison had been cured, he naturally didn't need to beg Yuan Chu anymore, so he directly returned home. "You can go back as well," Ling Han said to Yuan Chu. "Yes, young Master Han." At first, Yuan Chu wanted to flatter Ling Han a few more times, but when he thought that Ling Han lived in the Imperial City and would definitely come to Tianyi from time to time, he didn't continue pestering him, and took his leave. Once the outsider left, all the members of the Jiang clan looked at Ling Han with eyes filled with reverence. Ling Han smiled, and said, "What? Don't you recognize me?" "I really don't recognize you," Jin Wuji said with a bitter smile. "Even Grandmaster Yuan Chu and Master Wu have to be so respectful to you. I really don't know what to do. How about I call you young Master Han as well?" "Fuck you." Ling Han laughed loudly. "Are you not treating me as a friend?" Jin Wuji instantly felt a warmth in his heart. After a whole 10 years, it still hadn't absorbed all of the opponent's blood, which showed just how weak it was. Otherwise, if it had been at the level of the setting Sun Saber Emperor's Sun-slashing saber, then not to mention refining it, Ling Han would definitely turn around and run. With his current strength, how could he fight against such a monster? This piece of metal continued to change its shape, and even turned into a small person, making a soundless roar. It made people wonder if this was a piece of metal that had a life of its own. However, living objects could not be stored into spatial rings, so it could be confirmed that the blood-sucking origin gold should be a dead object. In any case, it was very strange. After smelting for a whole day and night, this piece of blood-sucking origin gold finally turned into a puddle of liquid, no longer changing at all. Ling Han's expression became serious, and he began to send his divine sense into the blood-sucking origin gold. If he wanted the blood-sucking origin gold to change according to his own form, he would have to fuse it into his own divine sense, which was equivalent to refining this piece of blood-sucking origin gold like a spirit tool. When Ling Han's divine sense suddenly entered an incomparably pitch-black world, and earth-shaking battle cries rang out beside his ears. His vision gradually brightened, and he saw that in front of him, there were currently countless people attacking a giant. This giant was indomitable, and its whole body shone with a metallic luster. It was incomparably hard, because no matter how many thousands or tens of thousands of people attacked it simultaneously with sharp weapons, there were only a few depressions on its skin, which would immediately return to normal. It was as if they had pressed a finger on its body. Ling Han was shocked, because this giant's body was completely formed from blood-sucking origin gold. With a thought, the blood-sucking origin gold instantly changed according to his will. It could turn into a metal thread that was thinner than a spider's thread, or it could turn into a metal sheet that was thinner than paper, and it could even turn into pigs, sheep, chickens, and dogs. However, it was just a minuscule version. Moreover, after being smelted by the strange fire, the blood-sucking origin gold had become even more durable. Probably even a spiritual pedestal tier elite would find it difficult to tear it apart. If it was suddenly wrapped around someone's neck and pulled, even a spiritual pedestal tier elite could suffer a calamity if they were caught off guard. He transformed the blood-sucking origin gold into a bracelet and wore it on his left hand. He walked out of the house, and Hunyeo immediately latched onto him. Rubbing her little head against his chest, she said, "Bad. Ling Han is bad." "How am I bad?" Ling Han asked with a smile. "Not playing with Nyo," the little girl said with a pout. Ling Han could not help but smile, and said, "Fine, fine, fine. I'll play with you, okay?" What Hunyeo meant by playing was actually fighting. It must have been taught to her by her tiger mother when they were still in the tiger's den. Every move, every advance and retreat, they were all the moves of a fierce tiger hunting its prey. However, Hunyeo had a terrifying comprehension ability in martial art. She forcibly changed the moves that were not suitable for humans into ones suitable for her to use. The little girl was like a little tiger, pouncing, slapping, biting, and throwing. They all possessed shocking power. Ling Han could not help but be entranced. Martial art was formless in the first place. Who made the rule that one could not learn from beasts? On the contrary, the ape arm fist, tiger form palm, weren't these all martial arts created by the predecessors with reference to the attack methods of other living creatures? All of a sudden, his thoughts scattered and his mind opened up, boundless and boundless. He entered into a state of sudden enlightenment. Sudden enlightenment was a special state that martial artists yearned for day and night. In such a state, it was possible that one could comprehend difficulties that they normally could not comprehend, and it was possible that they could obtain rapid progress in martial art. However, such a state could only be encountered and not sought. According to speculation, it required the martial artist's consciousness to resonate with heaven and earth, which was extremely mysterious. A martial artist being able to experience sudden enlightenment once in their lifetime was already enough to burn incense and worship Buddha. Moreover, it usually started from the flower blossom tier, because only by leaving the mortal body would one be qualified to merge with the Tao of heaven and earth and resonate with it. Even in the Winter Moon sect, spiritual ocean tier was a power that couldn't be ignored. "Get out, I'm going to sleep. When I'm full of energy, I'll accompany you, old dog, to discuss the redemption of your young master." Ling Han flicked his hands, and said, "You can kneel and rest." Uncle Fu obviously couldn't kneel and rest, but when he saw Ling Han's sword swaying around Ao Yangming's neck, he could only sigh, close the tent, and sit cross-legged on the ground. He was waiting for an opportunity. As long as Ling Han wanted to run, he'd crack open Ling Han's skull the moment he poked his head out, not giving Ling Han the chance to threaten him with Ao Yangming. Inside the tent, Ling Han smiled at Lu Yutong and whispered into her ear, "I'll bring you to a place, don't resist." Feeling Ling Han's warm breath on her neck, Lu Yutong couldn't help but blush. She didn't hear clearly what Ling Han was saying, and only knew to nod her head randomly, foolishly. Ling Han grabbed Lu Yutong's slender hand, and with a thought, show, he brought Lu Yutong and Ao Yangming into the Black Tower. Lu Yutong was stunned for a moment, then cried out in surprise. They were clearly in a small tent earlier, so how did they suddenly arrive in such a large space? "Where is this place?" she murmured. "A safe place." Ling Han didn't explain in detail because it was hard to explain, and it involved his previous life. Moreover, the Black Tower's existence was too important. It wasn't that he didn't trust Lu Yutong, but this secret itself was a heavy burden, and he didn't want Lu Yutong to bear it. Lu Yutong nodded. She naturally had absolute trust in Ling Han. Wah! Hunyo flew over, and just when Lu Yutong thought that the little girl was missing her and was about to pick her up, Hunyo elegantly bypassed her and threw herself into Ling Han's arms, using her little head to continuously rub against Ling Han. Then, she turned around and made a face at Lu Yutong, clearly showing off her strength. Ling Han was Nyo's. That was her unspoken meaning. Lu Yutong's face couldn't help but twitch. She didn't expect this little girl's jealousy to be so strong. Ling Han patted Hunyo's head, and said to Lu Yutong, "It's all thanks to Nyo that I was able to find you so quickly. You have to thank her properly." Hunyo was even more pleased with herself, and grinned widely at Lu Yutong. Lu Yutong could only feel speechless. She felt that she had encountered a very strong opponent, because Ling Han might be on guard against anyone, but he would not be on guard against a little girl. The little girl could act like a spoiled child to her heart's content, and stick to Ling Han all day long. This was an advantage that neither she nor Li Si-chan had. Moreover, the little girl had obviously treated Ling Han as her private property. Just now, it was obviously an action of protecting her food. Her jealousy was beyond reason. "You go and rest first, I have to interrogate this guy." Ling Han picked up Ao Yangming, who was thrown to the side. This ingrate obviously had to die, but he still wanted to ask some things about the Winter Moon sect. In the outside world, Uncle Fu suddenly frowned, because he had not heard any movement in the tent for a long time. He couldn't help but listen carefully, and his expression immediately changed drastically, because he couldn't even hear the sound of breathing or heartbeat. He hurriedly leaped out and directly pounced into the tent, but the small tent was empty, without a second figure. How was this possible? Uncle Fu's face turned ashen. Could it be that the brat had grasped some kind of teleportation ability, and had already escaped with Ao Yangming? Ling Han smiled faintly and said, "I have always been a person who will seek revenge for the smallest grievance. Whoever cuts off a finger of mine, I will cut off that person's arm. This time, I only doubled the amount, which is already merciful enough." "How dare you!" The four great Vajras charged towards Ling Han at the same time. They wanted to use their thunderous attacks to prevent Ling Han from attacking Feng Luo. As long as they could rescue Feng Luo, it did not matter how strange a mere poly-state cultivator was. Ling Han used his leg to flick Feng Luo out of the ground. He grabbed Feng Luo in his hand and began to swing him around, using him as a weapon against the four Vajras. The moment this human weapon appeared, the four guardian deities naturally did not dare to block it. They were afraid that they would injure Feng Luo, so they immediately retreated. All of a sudden, a young man in poly tier displayed his invincible might, forcing four elites of gushing spring tier to retreat pathetically. They did not even dare to receive a single attack from him. Despicable and shameless. The four guardian deities shouted angrily. Chapter 178. Peng, 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 peng. Feng Yan's fists landed on the blood-sucking origin gold, and actually reflected rays of silver light. That was the origin power breaking apart upon impact, once again turning back into spiritual qi. Feng Yan's strength was not enough to break through the blood-sucking origin gold, but his strength was far above Ling Han's. The huge force of the rebound was like waves crashing against Ling Han, causing him to involuntarily retreat, and retreat. Seeing that the blade was getting further and further away from Feng Luo's shoulder, Ling Han snorted coldly, and 6 flashes of sword qi sliced through at the same time. Pooh, Feng Luo's left arm also could not escape the fate of being chopped off. Ah! Feng Luo had already fainted from the pain, but this time, he was once again awakened by the pain. Ling Han's figure retreated quickly, and he withdrew his left hand. The blood-sucking origin gold once again turned into a ring, wrapping around his wrist. His face was slightly pale. After all, even with the body of dead tree, receiving such a force of rebound still made his insides feel as if they were boiling, and it was extremely uncomfortable. The entire place was silent once again. At first glance, in the clash between the two of them, Feng Yan naturally had the upper hand. With a punch through the air, he had forced Ling Han back, but Ling Han was still able to chop off Feng Luo's other arm with a single strike, and even managed to retreat unscathed. So it was Ling Han who had won again. Awesome, he was really too awesome. Not only did he have the strength, he also had the guts. Feng Yan's face was filled with murderous intent, and it materialized and wrapped around his body. His younger brother's arms had been crippled in front of him, and this caused his murderous intent to burn. He definitely had to kill Ling Han, or else he would not rest. Your actions just now have personally given away your own life, he said expressionlessly as he walked towards Ling Han. With a wave of his right hand, he drew out the long saber at his waist. It was as cold as autumn water, and was obviously a divine weapon. Ling Han smiled faintly, and said, "You've already attacked twice, and I'm still standing here perfectly fine. You're just a so-so." Although he said this, he did not dare to underestimate him in the slightest. After all, there was a difference of 7 levels between their cultivation levels. "Today, no one will be able to save you," Feng Yan said coldly. Every step he took made a heavy sound, as if he was stepping on someone's heart, making them feel extremely uncomfortable. "Oh, could it be that the surname of Rain Country is Feng now?" A clear voice rang out, and a tall man walked over. He looked to be about 30 years old, and his appearance was quite handsome. He was dressed in a crimson brocade robe, and had the bearing of a king. 1 meter behind the man was an ordinary-looking middle-aged man who was following him closely. "The Crown Prince is the Crown Prince." Why is the first prince here? Didn't he leave the academy 2 years ago? It's just a coincidence. Hee, this is going to be fun. Feng Yan thinks of himself as the big boss of the academy, but the first imperial prince is the real master. Are they going to fight it out? No matter how powerful Feng Yan is, he wouldn't dare to go head-to-head with the eldest imperial prince, right? That's not necessarily the case. Earlier, Feng Luo was acting so arrogantly. Now that Feng Yan wanted to kill someone in public, it's clear that he doesn't care about the emperor's laws. Just wait. Everyone was talking at once. The situation had developed to this point, and even the eldest imperial prince had joined in. "Feng Yan, why aren't you paying your respects when you see the eldest imperial prince?" The middle-aged man behind the eldest imperial prince shouted coldly. How did Feng Yan manage to rise to such a high level all of a sudden? What, 7th layer of gushing spring tier, is that true? Since the first prince has said so, it should be true. No wonder he dared to challenge the eldest imperial prince. So he has cultivation in the 7th layer of gushing spring tier. That's not right. So what if he is in the spiritual ocean tier? That is the eldest imperial prince we are talking about. That's true. I really don't know where Feng Yan's backing comes from. Could it be that he really is the illegitimate son of the headmaster? Everyone exclaimed in shock. 7th layer of gushing spring tier, and he was already on par with the 3rd imperial prince. But taking into account Feng Yan's age, he could really be considered the strongest genius of Rain Country. No wonder he dared to challenge me. The eldest imperial prince's expression darkened, and he said, "Then make your move." Feng Yan did not hold back, and with a single leap, he leapt towards the 3rd imperial prince. He did not use his saber, and merely punched out with his fists. There was a layer of silver light wrapped around his fists, and it exuded a powerful and domineering aura. Using fists in front of me? The eldest imperial prince humphed. A cold glint flashed in his eyes, and he similarly punched out with his fists. Instantly, it was as if an emperor had descended, causing everyone's heart to palpitate. They only wanted to prostrate themselves on the ground and pledge allegiance to the eldest imperial prince. Son of Heaven fist technique. Pang, 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 pang. The two of them continued to exchange blows, and the eldest imperial prince had the upper hand. His cultivation level was high, his power was strong, and the Son of Heaven fist technique that he used was even more superior in terms of grade. If he still did not have the upper hand, then it would really be unreasonable. Yet Ling Han's eyes narrowed slightly. Looking at the silver light that was exuding from Feng Yan's entire body, he mumbled, "Special physique." It was more refreshing to read on his phone. Chapter 179. Ling Han had given the spatial ring to Hu Niu after some consideration, because the little girl's appetite was too big. As long as the spatial ring was filled with food, then even if an accident happened and she got lost, she would not have to worry about starving for a short period of time. In this regard, Lu Yutong and Li Si-chan could only nod helplessly. At the same time, they breathed a sigh of relief, because there was only one spatial ring. No matter who he gave it to, the other person would inevitably feel dejected. Would they lose to a little girl? In the next few days, Ling Han kept feeling that the atmosphere was a bit strange. The number of times Lu Yutong and Li Si-chan quarreled became fewer and fewer, making him feel as if the sun had risen from the west. Such a strange thing had actually happened. After another day, Ling Han finally found the place mentioned in the notebook. There were 2 stone pillars that suddenly rose from the riverside. They were 300 meters tall, and their characteristics were very obvious. This was where the hidden stakes were located. They waited, and after more than 5 hours, they saw one black-colored stake after another suddenly appear. However, it definitely did not appear from the bottom of the river. Instead, it was like the previous central hall, appearing out of thin air. Ling Han did not hesitate and said, "You guys go in first." With a sweep of his hand, he stored the 3 girls into the black tower at the same time, while he himself leapt swiftly. Shwa, 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 he was like a dragonfly skimming the surface of the water. The tips of his feet tapped on the stakes one after another, and he swiftly swept towards the other side of the river. Shwa, it was at this moment that a graceful figure shot out, following closely behind Ling Han. With a quick stride, Ling Han had already arrived at the other side of the river. Turning around, he saw that a girl was also crossing the river. After his eyes swept over her, he could not help but narrow his eyes slightly. This girl was actually in the spiritual ocean tier. After a closer look, Ling Han could not help but feel a sense of amazement. Lu Yutong and Li Si-chan could both be considered stunning beauties. In the imperial city, their beauty had spread far and wide, and they were known as the twin beauties. However, compared to this girl, they obviously paled in comparison. Ling Han made a comparison. This girl's beauty could be ranked in the top 10 among all the beauties he had seen in his life. In fact, she could even make it into the top 3. One had to know that he had been an ultimate warrior of the heaven tier in his last life, and had seen countless beauties. For this girl to be able to rank in the top 10, she was indeed extraordinarily beautiful. Most importantly, she was very young. At most, she was 20 years old. A 20-year-old warrior of the spiritual ocean tier, even Ling Han had to nod in approval. Even among the geniuses he had come into contact with in his last life, she could be ranked in the top 10. How could such a genius appear in the tiny 9 nations of the desolate north? Fairy Chi! Fairy Chi! A voice called out from the other side of the river. Gu Fenghua's figure had already appeared, obviously chasing after that girl. Ling Han suddenly recalled that this guy had said that he had encountered a stunning fairy on the way here, and had followed her all the way into the mystery realm. Obviously, this girl should be that fairy. She was indeed astonishingly beautiful. However, it was at this moment that a sudden change occurred. Those wooden stumps disappeared. They did not disappear one by one. Rather, they all disappeared in an instant, as if they had never existed in the first place. Gu Fenghua instantly stopped. He was a freak, yes, but he was not an idiot. How would he dare to cross the lightning river? That girl was also shocked, but did not panic. Thus, the eldest imperial prince also hoped to maintain a good relationship with Ling Han. Wu Songlin's previous attitude had further strengthened his resolve. Ling Han smiled, and said, "Does the eldest imperial prince know what methods that Feng Yan has mastered to be able to make Headmaster Lian so biased towards him?" The eldest imperial prince instantly frowned, and revealed a furious expression. He could not help but slam the table, and said, "That traitor." He did not necessarily hate Feng Yan that much, but it was obvious that Feng Yan and Ling Han were sworn enemies, so he naturally did not mind acting a little exaggerated to draw closer to Ling Han. This person has a special physique, and his battle prowess is also very strong. But if it was just that, he would only be able to gain Lian Guangzu's recognition at most, and would definitely not be able to command him. But Feng Yan's attitude, though respectful on the surface, actually seems to be Lian Guangzu's superior. How strange, Ling Han mumbled. The eldest imperial prince also sank into deep thought. What kind of power did Feng Yan have that could actually make a powerful warrior of spiritual pedestal tier, a highly respected old headmaster, practically listen to his commands? As the eldest imperial prince of Rain Country, he actually knew nothing about this matter, which made him feel a faint sense of unease. "I will investigate this matter," the eldest imperial prince said. Then, he turned to Ling Han, and said in a serious tone, "Brother Ling is an intelligent man, so I will not beat around the bush and waste everyone's time. What does the eldest imperial prince want to say?" Ling Han asked with a smile, though he already knew the eldest imperial prince's intentions. "I would like to ask Brother Ling to help me ascend the throne," the eldest imperial prince said. Instantly, the air of a ruler burst forth, and his eyes shone with a dazzling light. Ling Han smiled faintly, and said, "What virtue or ability do I have to actually be able to help the eldest imperial prince ascend the throne?" "Ha ha ha, Brother Ling is too modest." The eldest imperial prince laughed loudly, and then changed the topic. "If I ascend the throne, the Ling family will be the ones who have performed a great meritorious service, and can be conferred the title of king with a different surname." King with a different surname? If these words were heard by the courtiers, they would definitely be so shocked that their scalps would go numb. In the history of Rain Country, there had never been a king with a different surname. This was definitely the highest honor that a courtier could receive. Thus, the eldest imperial prince's face was filled with anticipation. He believed that Ling Han would definitely agree immediately. However, he was soon disappointed, because there was not the slightest bit of change on Ling Han's face. His eyes were too clear and deep, as if his ambition to become an emperor was but a fleeting cloud in his eyes. So this kind of inheritance was completely different from cultivation and martial arts techniques, and couldn't be expressed in words or diagrams. Interesting. He smiled, and said, "When eldest imperial prince can bring that eyeball over, then we can discuss the matter of cooperation. For now, let's all be friends, okay?" The eldest imperial prince also knew that empty promises wouldn't move Ling Han, because whatever he could promise, the third imperial prince could as well, without any advantage. But at least he'd become friends with Ling Han, so the other matters could be taken slowly. Young Master Han, the day after tomorrow, the Spirit Treasures Pavilion will be holding an auction, and it's said that there will be an incredibly valuable foundation building pill. Would you be interested in coming along? The eldest Imperial Prince asked earnestly. Ling Han couldn't help but have a strange expression on his face. This foundation building pill was naturally provided by him, but he'd never thought that it would actually become the most valuable auction item. He immediately wanted to shake his head, but after some thought, he realized that the level of Rain Country was too low. Perhaps there would be some treasures that would be thrown into the dark. That's fine. He changed his mind. Ha 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 ha, then the day after tomorrow, I will personally come to receive young Master Han. The eldest Imperial Prince was very satisfied. If he appeared together with Ling Han in public, it would definitely create the impression that the relationship between the two of them was very deep. At that time, those mid-tier clans would have to reconsider their stance. Ling Han nodded, and took his leave. He still had to go see Li Hao and Zhu Shuiyi. Chapter 182. It was unknown whether the eldest Imperial Prince would be able to discover the secret behind Feng Yan, but it would probably be difficult. Because the third Imperial Prince had already made his move a few days ago, but Lian Guangzhu had appeared and forcibly chased the Imperial Guards he had sent out of the academy. With such an incident, the third Imperial Prince would definitely investigate Feng Yan. If the third Imperial Prince had discovered anything, he would definitely inform him, but there was still no news from the third Imperial Prince. Obviously, he had not discovered anything yet. When they arrived at Tianyi, Ling Han comforted Li Hao and Zhu Shuiyi. It was temporarily impossible for Li Hao to return to the academy, but it was definitely a blessing in disguise for Li Hao. What kind of place was Tianyi? A place that sold medicine. There was nothing else here, but in terms of alchemical pills, it was estimated that at least a third of Rain Country's stockpile was here. And in terms of high-level alchemical pills, they were basically sold from this place. Ling Han treated Li Hao as a true friend, so he naturally told Yuan Chu to provide Li Hao with an unlimited supply of alchemical pills, and he himself would also give Li Hao some pointers on his cultivation. Just think, with an endless supply of alchemical pills and the guidance of a former heaven-tier elite, if Li Hao's power could not improve by leaps and bounds, then he should really smash himself to death with a piece of tofu. Li Hao and Zhu Shuiyi naturally understood this, and could not help but feel even more grateful towards Ling Han. They secretly decided that they would definitely do something for Ling Han. After leaving Tianyi, Ling Han had not even returned to the academy when he was invited by the third Imperial Prince along the way. Brother Ling. The third Imperial Prince was still as domineering as before, but there was a hint of gloom on his face. I heard that my eldest brother came looking for you today. Since third Imperial Prince already knows, then why bother asking when you already know the answer? Ling Han said directly. He had no interest in the struggle for power between these two brothers, and did not want to get involved in it at all. He. The third Imperial Prince laughed. I believe that Brother Ling will not be swayed by my eldest brother's flowery words. Ling Han could not help but smile, and said, that may not be the case. He listed out all the conditions that the eldest Imperial Prince had laid out. As he listened, the expression on the third Imperial Prince's face continuously changed. He thought to himself that the eldest Imperial Prince was really ruthless, even daring to promise such conditions as becoming a prince with a different surname and breaking through to the flower blossom tier. It should be known that even if the current Rain Emperor wanted to bestow a title to a king with a different surname, he would still be opposed by many officials. There were too many interests involved in this, and it was not something that could be resolved with a simple title. To be conferred the title of king, one must have a fiefdom. But Rain Country had already been established for thousands of years, and all of its territories had already been divided. Where would he find a piece of land for Ling Han? Could it be that he wanted Ling Han to lead an army into battle and occupy the territory of another country? And using the power of the nation to help Ling Han break through to the flower blossom tier was even more ridiculous. If it was that easy, then there would only be one person in the flower blossom tier in the Rain Country. I just knew that Brother Ling is a righteous man, and would definitely not betray me. The third imperial prince laughed loudly. He looked like he was laughing very happily, but Ling Han could hear the sinister tone in his laughter. In the struggle for imperial power, who was not cold-blooded and cruel? Even blood brothers could stab each other. Ling Han laughed mischievously, and said, that might not necessarily be the case. As long as there is enough interest, anything can be discussed. Pooh! The third prince immediately spluttered. It was as if his face had been punched by someone, and his expression was extremely awkward. His face twitched, and he forced a smile, and said, Brother Ling is really good at joking. Ling Han shook his head, and said, I am not joking. For example, if I can cultivate the eye of truth, I will definitely become good friends with the third prince. Eye of truth. The third prince's expression changed. Only now did he realize that the eldest prince had also revealed this treasure to Ling Han. But compared to a king with a different surname and power of the nation, this mystical power was actually a small matter. If it was not locked deep within the inner treasury, he would not mind taking it out and giving it to Ling Han. After all, it was only a support-type mystical power, and after so many years, there was no one who could obtain the inheritance from it. He believed that Ling Han would not be an exception. Using a useless item to exchange for a great help, how could someone as smart as the third prince not want to do such a profitable business? But the key point was that he indeed did not have the right to enter the inner treasury. Wait! The third prince tapped his fingers, and said, in a little more than 2 months, it will be Father's 60th birthday, and the whole nation will be celebrating. At that time, Father will definitely hold a large banquet, and take out some treasures from the imperial treasury for everyone to admire. There is a chance to enter the imperial treasury, but the lock of the inner treasury is the heaven and earth linked lock. Unless one has the key, there is no way to open it. Ling Han's eyes lit up. He had the blood-sucking origin gold in his hands, and he could change it at will. He could open any lock, so this was not a problem for him. He said, then I would like to enter the imperial treasury to take a look. The third prince was very smart, and immediately walked towards Ling Han in shock, and said, Brother Ling has a way to open the heaven and earth linked lock? Ah, I have learned a little lock-picking skill. Ling Han naturally would not reveal the secret of the blood-sucking origin gold, and casually used an excuse to gloss over it. The third prince thought for a moment and said, all right, after I have obtained the person to handle this matter, I will bring Brother Ling into the imperial treasury. However, Brother Ling, I will say the unpleasant things first. There are many precious treasures in the inner treasury, and they are too important. You must not dip your fingers in them, or let alone you, even I will be implicated. Don't worry, I am not interested in the other things, Ling Han said with a smile. Chapter 183. Ling Han's heart stirred, and he asked, what sword? 10th tier spirit tool, demon birth sword. Azura Demon Emperor said. This is the sword used by the first demon master, and fused with the demon master's martial intent as the eye of the formation here. If one wants to refine the arm of a god, the formation must be opened, so the demon birth sword must be taken out. Ling Han smiled faintly, and said, although Senior speaks with a strong sense of righteousness, and is even more extravagant, making my little heart beat wildly, how do I know that you aren't that chaos origin god in disguise, and actually want to trick me into opening the restriction and letting you out? Ha ha ha. Azura Demon Emperor laughed loudly, and then said solemnly, this lord can swear on the name of my soul that this lord is Azura Demon Emperor, and definitely not chaos origin god. If there is even half a word of falsehood, then let my soul forever fall into the cycle of reincarnation, unable to reincarnate for 10,000 lifetimes. Soul oath. This was the most solemn oath. The higher the tier of a martial artist, the more they would not dare to make such an oath carelessly, because there was heaven's will in the unseen world. An oath made with one's soul would be engraved by the Tao of heaven, and there would definitely not be a good ending for breaking the oath. Ling Han was a heaven-tier elite in his previous life, so he naturally knew that a soul oath definitely couldn't be faked. However, a smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Although a soul oath couldn't be faked, the story of Azura Demon Emperor before could be faked, so this oath of his was naturally meaningless. Ling Han pondered whether he should take this risk or not. If he could bring the demon birth sword and the arm of God into the Black Tower, then no matter if there were any schemes or not, he would deal with them all obediently. However, a 10th tier spirit tool was definitely not an issue, but the arm of God was at God tier, on par with the Black Tower, so could he refine it? Moreover, the demon birth sword definitely had a tool spirit, and the arm of God even had the remnant consciousness of Chaos Origin God. They both needed the other party's nod to be taken into the Black Tower, so he didn't have the initiative. Thus, Ling Han didn't dare to make a rash decision. "Youngster, don't you believe this, Lord?" Azura Demon Emperor snorted, revealing a displeased expression. "Fine, this Lord will summon the tool spirit of the demon birth sword, and you can ask it yourself." In a short while, a streak of light swiftly flew over from afar. It really was a sword, and there were many patterns on the sword's body, forming characters one after another. With a glance, Ling Han's head felt as if it was boiling, churning and extremely uncomfortable. It definitely surpassed the 9th tier, or else Ling Han wouldn't be unable to bear such martial intent with just a glance. "It's indeed a tool spirit." A voice was transmitted from Small Tower. It was connected to Ling Han's consciousness, and could communicate at any time without worrying about anyone knowing. "I am the demon birth sword." This sword shook lightly, and transmitted a divine sense. It was indeed a 10th tier spirit tool. Ling Han couldn't help but feel a surge of joy. He planned to walk the path of the sword, so he naturally desired to possess a high-level spirit tool. If he could obtain the demon birth sword, then he wouldn't have to consider the problem of a weapon before breaking through to the immortal level. "Youngster, do you still have any doubts about this, Lord?" Azura Demon Emperor's voice once again sounded in Ling Han's consciousness. He could only use divine sense to communicate with Ling Han. A smile appeared on Ling Han's face, and he said to Small Tower in his mind, "Can you help me subdue this tool spirit's main body?" Small Tower was silent for a while, as if thinking, and said, "If I use my full battle prowess, I can destroy all existences in this realm, and subdue a 10th tier spirit tool would naturally be a piece of cake. But in the depths of my memories, there is a strong voice telling me that I definitely can't expose myself. 10,000 years ago, in order to become one with you, I used up the little bit of source power that I had just recovered, and in order to allow you to take over my body and be reborn, I used up all the source power that I had just condensed. If I make a move now, without source power to conceal heaven's secrets, my existence will definitely be discovered by many powerful existences. At that time, you will die, and I will be stripped away." Ling Han did not hear the difference between source power and origin power. He sighed, and said, "After talking for so long, you definitely can't make a move. There is 10,000 years' time for me to recover source power, and I can make a move once," Small Tower said. Ling Han's expression was strange. In 10,000 years' time, he would either become a god or become a pile of bones. Then, he definitely wouldn't be able to wait for Small Tower to show its might. "However, if you can bring the tool spirit's main body into my body, then I can make a move without any qualms, and suppress it," Small Tower added. In the end, he still had to bring the demon birth sword into the Black Tower. Ling Han thought for a moment, then said, "How much of what that Azura Demon Emperor said do you think is true? I don't understand people's hearts, so I can't judge whether it's true or false." Small Tower trembled lightly, as if shaking its head. "But based on the divine sense he left on your body, as long as he enters the tower, I can suppress him at will." He had to enter the tower again. Ling Han sighed. This was the most difficult part. It was like he had clearly drawn a good set of cards, but had no chance to play them. No matter how good the cards were, they could only rot in his hands, making him very depressed. N. Ling Han was slightly startled, and turned to look behind him. He heard a rumbling sound, and in the time of a few breaths, 3 coffins slid over as if they had grown legs. Rong Huanxian, he really lingered around like a ghost. Peng, Rong Huanxian jumped out of the copper coffin. His gaze swept over Ling Han, and he couldn't help but reveal an expression of surprise as he said, "You actually didn't get infected by the demonic chi and become a walking corpse like those dregs, even you didn't, what more me?" Ling Han said indifferently. "You mean, you're stronger than me?" Rong Huanxian said with narrowed eyes, revealing a dangerous aura. "Isn't that obvious?" Ling Han said with a smile. Perhaps for a very long time, this guy would become his opponent, so he naturally didn't mind mocking him a bit. Chapter 184. Ling Han smiled and said, "A few days ago, when I was eating in a restaurant, I accidentally ran into a pair of assassins, and 3 members of the Black Cloud Army died." The eldest imperial prince was startled, and said, "Young Master Han was also there that day?" "Yes." Ling Han nodded and said, "That girl seems to be a member of the royal family, right? She hasn't even reached 30 years old yet, but she has already reached the Sea of Souls realm." "How shocking." The great imperial prince's expression immediately darkened. After a moment of silence, he said, "This woman is called Su Kuexian. She entered the palace a few years ago and was given the title of Consort Yun by Imperial Father. Since young Master Han knows that the power of the nation can help one break through to the flower blossom tier, then he should know that it can also speed up the advancement of one's cultivation level. However, the power of the nation is limited, and Imperial Father actually spent such a large amount of the fortune of the nation on a woman, Hang." His last sentence was already extremely disgraceful. He actually dared to criticize the current emperor. But it could also be seen how dissatisfied he was with Su Kuexian. When Ling Han recalled Su Kuexian's natural seductiveness, he couldn't help but think to himself, no wonder even the Rain Emperor has fallen head over heels for her. She is indeed a stunningly beautiful woman. The fact that she could lead the Black Cloud Army out of the Imperial Palace was proof enough. If it wasn't for the Emperor's favor, as the current Imperial concubine, how could she easily leave the Imperial Palace? "Does this Yun Fei have any children?" Ling Han casually asked. Fortunately, he didn't. The eldest Imperial Prince shook his head. Otherwise, with the Rain Emperor and Imperial concubine Yun's favor, he and the third Imperial Prince could forget about fighting for the throne. As the two of them spoke, they had already arrived at the Spirit Treasures Pavilion. One by one, they got off the carriage and a young man came forward to greet them, saying, "Sun Ziyan greets the eldest Imperial Prince." Sun Ziyan. Ling Han could not help but be moved, and walked towards this young man. He had a good appearance and a slender figure. He should have just broken through to Gushing Spring tier, as his aura was not very stable yet. "Ziyan, you may dispense with the formalities." The eldest prince raised his hand slightly, naturally exuding the aura of someone in a superior position. In Rain Country, the Qi clan was naturally the #1 noble clan. They controlled the country, and their power could overturn the world. However, the Sun clan was only slightly inferior to the Qi clan, so Sun Ziyan was not very wary of the eldest imperial prince. After bowing, he looked towards Ling Han and said, "Brother Ling, we finally meet. Come, the other party was waiting for him here." "Sun Ziyan, what are you trying to do?" Lu Yutong asked coldly. As her master's maid, she naturally had to stand at the front lines. Sun Ziyan revealed a shocked and envious expression. Lu Yutong and Li Si-chan were known as the twin beauties of the imperial city, and the number of men who were interested in them could line up several times around the imperial city. He was also one of their admirers. But now, these two delicate flowers were actually plucked by the same man. It really made people envious and jealous. If Ling Han knew what he was thinking right now, he would definitely cry out that he was innocent. In all honesty, he didn't do anything. He was as pure as a little white flower. Sun Ziyan smiled, and said, "I just want to resolve a grudge between us, Brother Ling." "Oh, there's such a thing?" the eldest prince interrupted. "It's just a small misunderstanding," Sun Ziyan casually replied. "Oh?" Ling Han's gaze turned cold. Chapter 185. Annihilate another Sun clan. The eldest imperial prince could not help but glance at Ling Han. Though he valued Ling Han very much, even if Ling Han had all the alchemists of Rain Country standing behind him, he could not possibly annihilate the Sun clan, because the 8 great clans were all pillars of the country. If it really reached that step, not only would the Rain Emperor make a move, even the ancestor that had always been in hiding would jump out. But Ling Han's calm to the point of indifference did not seem to be words that he had said in a moment of agitation. The deep look in his eyes even caused the eldest imperial prince to feel a chill. How could that be? He was in the 9th layer of Gushing Spring tier, and already had 1 foot in the Spiritual Ocean tier. Moreover, he was the eldest imperial prince, and he was actually frightened by the look in a young man's eyes? Hang, I hope you're not so stupid. Sun Ziyan did not hear Ling Han's words. He flicked his sleeves, looking extremely displeased. Of course. He had thought that with him stepping forward, it would be a simple matter to mediate the grudge between Ling Han and Qin Yunxiang, but he had never imagined that Ling Han would not give him any face at all. The eldest imperial prince did not try to persuade him anymore. Ling Han's words just now were obviously meant for him to hear. If he tried to persuade him again, would Ling Han say something even more shocking, and annihilate another Sun clan? That would really be treason. Sun Ziyan turned and left. When he arrived at the main entrance of the Spirit Treasures Pavilion, he saw an old man come up to greet him, and said, "Ziyan, what did that brat say?" It was Qin Yunxiang. Sun Ziyan revealed a sliver of displeasure. Though he did not care about the lives of a few lowly commoners, this old man actually had that kind of hobby, which made him feel extremely disgusted. But who asked this old man to be his father-in-law? Not willing to give up. He shook his head. Qin Yunxiang was first shocked, then immediately said angrily, "This brat is relying on the protection of the noble lady of the Qin clan, and actually does not give face to you, Ziyan." Sun Ziyan gave a humph. He naturally knew that Qin Yunxiang was trying to sow discord between them, but he was indeed very displeased. The eldest imperial prince and the 3rd imperial prince both seemed to have quite a good relationship with this brat. It's not as simple as him sponging off a woman. What? Qin Yunxiang broke out in a cold sweat. The Qin clan was just a small clan. If they really offended the 1st prince or the 3rd prince, the Qin clan would be exterminated in a matter of minutes. What are you afraid of? Sun Ziyan said coldly. Hehe, with Ziyan blocking for me, of course I have nothing to fear. Qin Yunxiang hurriedly flattered him. Although he was the old man's father-in-law, the two of them could not be mentioned in the same breath. Only then did Sun Ziyan give a humph. He turned around to look at Ling Han and the others who were ascending the stairs, a cold smile at the corners of his lips. Greetings, 1st Prince. The guards at the entrance of the Spirit Treasures Pavilion were naturally quick-witted people. When they saw the 1st Prince and the others, they hurriedly bowed in greeting. A small steward immediately came out to welcome them, saying, "1st Prince, young masters, and noble ladies have graced our pavilion with your presence. Your presence brings light to our humble pavilion. Please come in." Under the guidance of that small steward, they walked up the stairs. There were private rooms on the 2nd and 3rd floors, but there were only a mere 20 private rooms on the 3rd floor. Those were reserved for the current Rain Emperor, the clan heads of the 8 great clans, the 2 headmasters of Huyang University, the pavilion master of Tianyiji, and other super important figures. Chapter 186. Many thanks for everyone's presence. An old man dressed in embroidered robes walked onto the auction stage and began to host the evening's auction. This old man knows that today, many people have come for the building foundation pills. However, today, this old man has also prepared a few good things, so please don't just spend your money on the building foundation pills. Everyone roared with laughter when they heard this, and the atmosphere in the surroundings instantly became relaxed. However, this was only temporary. Once the foundation building pill appeared, it was guaranteed that everyone would be envious. One foundation building pill could allow an elite at the peak of spiritual ocean tier to build his spiritual pedestal and advance to a higher cultivation level, becoming the most influential person in Rain Country. Which person or clan wouldn't go crazy over it? How many spiritual pedestal tier elites were there in Rain Country? Even the 8 great clans and the imperial family only had 2 or 3 spiritual pedestal tier elites on the surface. Even if there were a few hidden aces behind them, if a clan had 5, it would definitely be terrifying. It was said that there would be 9 foundation building pills today. If they could all be obtained by one party, then under the best circumstances, they could allow 9 elites at the peak of spiritual ocean tier to break through to spiritual pedestal tier. What kind of concept was that? Instantly surpassing the 8 great clans? Of course, even if they took the foundation building pill, it was impossible for everyone to successfully break through, but as long as there was a 50% chance, there would still be 4 or 5 people, and if there was a 1 in 3 chance, there would still be 3. Whoever didn't go crazy would be a pig. If the pill was expensive, then so be it. As long as they could break through to spiritual pedestal tier, how much money would they have to earn back? Everyone laughed loudly, but there was a look of determination in their eyes. Even if they had to go bankrupt today, they would obtain a foundation building pill. Ling Han felt an undercurrent of excitement, and couldn't help but smile. Who knew, the foundation building pill might be auctioned off for a sky-high price today. Fortunately, there were too few spiritual pedestal tier elites in Rain Country. If they went to a place where martial art was more flourishing and spiritual pedestal tier elites were as common as dogs, then how much would the foundation building pill be worth? I didn't think that so many people would come. I was full of confidence before, and thought that I could obtain at least 1 foundation building pill, and it would be best if I could obtain 2, but now I'm a little nervous. Even 1 foundation building pill is not guaranteed, the eldest imperial prince said, shaking his head. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, the eldest imperial prince has yet to advance into the spiritual ocean tier, and no matter what, he still needs another 5 years before he can attempt to break through to the spiritual pedestal tier. Who knows, there might be new foundation building pills appearing by then. The eldest imperial prince sighed, and said, young Master Han has just arrived at the imperial city, so you are not clear about this. At least, in my memory, there has never been an alchemical pill like this that can help you break through. Not to mention a high-grade alchemical pill like the foundation building pill, even the purple origin pill used to break through to gushing spring tier is extremely rare. Ling Han's expression immediately became strange. The material of that purple origin pill was the dark moon grass, which could be used to expand the Dantian space. Even heaven tier elites would be moved, so how could this guy not want it? I wonder who provided those 9 foundation establishment pills. He wanted to order the tool spirit to unleash its might and directly erase Ling Han, but he discovered that the order he issued was like a stone sinking into the ocean. He should have immediately realized that his divine sense was missing by a sliver, but who asked him to fuse with Rong Huan Xian's physical body, causing his sensitivity to be greatly reduced? He actually only realized that something was wrong when he couldn't command it. This brat was too strange. He had spent several tens of thousands of years of effort to slowly permeate into the demon birth sword bit by bit, eroding the tool spirit and making this treasured sword his own, greatly weakening the formation's power. Only then was Rong Huan Xian able to take the demon birth sword away. He never thought that in just over a day's work, Ling Han would completely erase his divine sense from the demon birth sword. No! The tool spirit of this treasured sword should have been destroyed as well, because his consciousness had already fused with the tool spirit, reaching the point where they would live and die together. Since his divine sense was destroyed, it meant that the tool spirit was also dead. He breathed a sigh of relief. Otherwise, if a 10th tier spirit tool showed its might, his current physical body really wouldn't be able to withstand it. Although he was an extremely special life form, developing from a pure soul state at the very beginning, without a physical body, he would still be rootless duckweed. Moreover, being suppressed for several tens of thousands of years, his vitality would definitely be greatly damaged. Previously, in order to stop Ling Han, he had expended too much demonic qi. Now that he had just occupied a physical body, if he were to immediately change it, he would be even more seriously injured. Thus, he didn't want this physical body to be destroyed. Ling Han smiled faintly, and said, "It would be a waste for you to use this sword." Ugh! Even with Azura Demon Emperor's temperament, he still had the urge to curse. With his status, just the fact that he had been suppressed for several tens of thousands of years could scare people half to death, and a junior actually dared to look down on him. So what if you have a 10th tier spirit tool? It's impossible for you to unleash its full power, so you'd better let this lord send you to your grave. Rong Huanxian sneered, opened his mouth, and spat. Wisps of black qi surged out, turning into multiple black thorns. This wasn't Azura Demon Emperor's demonic qi, but Rong Huanxian's corpse qi. Ling Han's expression was stern. He raised the demon birth sword horizontally, the tip of the sword slightly pointing downwards. Endless sword intent condensed, and multiple small-scale vortexes actually appeared in the surroundings. Rong Huanxian's expression instantly changed, and he said, "What sword technique is this? Why does this lord seem to remember seeing it somewhere before?" Mysterious 3000 Ling Han drew his sword, and origin power surged out, turning into a 5-colored light. This was the change after the gushing spring tear. The spiritual qi of heaven and earth condensed one after another, turning into multiple swords of origin power. There were actually more than 100 of them. In the first place, the 3 styles of black origin could only be cultivated after the gushing spring tear. Previously, he had relied on the power of the gushing spring tear to use it, but in the end, he was still unable to unleash the true might of the 3 styles of black origin. Now that he had reached the gushing spring tear, at least this mysterious 3000 finally revealed its true prowess. This sword intent, this is the sword technique of the Heaven's Sword Palace. Rong Huanxian's eyes suddenly narrowed, revealing an obvious look of fear. However, the attack had arrived, so he could only parry. His hands moved in a flurry, and one after another, black qi surged out. It was impossible to tell whether it was demonic qi or corpse qi. Peng, 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 100 swords pierced through, and the sword light was blazing, turning Rong Huanxian into a sieve. Rong Huanxian used one hand to protect his head, and the other to protect his heart. Both were entangled by black-colored demonic qi, and the other parts of his body were riddled with holes, with blood gushing out violently. He lowered his hands. His arms had been sliced to the point that white bones could be seen, but his head and heart were completely protected. Heaven, sword, palace. Rong Huanxian said word by word. He gritted his teeth, appearing to be extremely furious. One after another, black qi circulated within his body, and his wounds immediately healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. He definitely could not fork out 40 million, so if the Spirit Treasures Pavilion came knocking, he could only cut all ties with Ling Han. In any case, it was Ling Han who had called out the price, so the money would naturally be coming from him. On this side, he was once again on tenterhooks. On the other side, Chen Yunxiang naturally breathed a sigh of relief. This time, he did not dare to increase the price no matter what. Sun Ziyan saw this, and a cold smile appeared at the corner of his lips. He said, "Sir, I would like to ask, if you bid for a price but cannot fork out the money, what should you do?" "Of course, according to the rules of our pavilion, cripple your cultivation, and never step into the Spirit Treasures Pavilion again." The auctioneer immediately answered. "Fine." Sun Ziyan humphed coldly, and said, "I suspect that this esteemed guest on the 3rd floor cannot fork out so much money, and has been competing maliciously with us all along." The auctioneer's gaze hardened. "Since young Master Sun has raised a doubt, then I shall verify it." He turned and left, walking backstage. The eldest imperial prince's expression instantly darkened. If they were chased out because of maliciously competing, where would his face be? Wait, this brat couldn't be doing this on purpose, right? Deliberately making him lose face, so as to remove an obstacle for the third imperial prince's ascension? Before he could finish his thought, the auctioneer had already returned, and said, "I have just confirmed with a sir in the pavilion. This esteemed guest on the third floor is definitely able to fork out 40 million. Furthermore, even if this esteemed guest does not have a single copper coin, our pavilion is also willing to offer a limit of 1 billion. Pu, everyone spluttered, and all of them coughed incessantly. A limit of 1 billion, what kind of concept was that? Ling Han could completely take away an item worth 1 billion without spending a single cent, and everything would be paid for by the Spirit Treasures Pavilion. Could even the clan heads of the 8 great clans obtain such an honor? The eldest imperial prince was also so shocked that his mouth was agape, and there was a strong shock in his eyes. The Spirit Treasures Pavilion really valued Ling Han too much, didn't they? Not only did they give him a private room on the third floor, they even offered a limit of 1 billion. Thinking about it, even he was green with envy. Ling Han smiled calmly, and said, "Since I've proven my wealth, then courtesy demands reciprocation. Please prove your wealth as well. I'm also very suspicious. Are you all so poor that you're trying to compete with me maliciously?" When these words came out, Sun Ziyan's and Qin Yanxiang's expressions changed at the same time. They definitely could not fork out 30 million in cash. I am a member of the Sun clan, could it be that I am unable to fork out a mere 30 million? Sun Ziyan said very unyieldingly.